Moving on to nervous tissue, and nervous tissue is made up of two types of cells, neurons and neuroglia. Neurons form the complex processing networks within the brain and spinal cord and connect all of the regions of the body to the brain and spinal cord as well. Neurons provide most of the unique functions of the nervous system, including sensing, thinking, remembering, controlling muscular activity, and regulating glandular secretions. So a neuron, or a nerve cell, which we have up on the slide here, is an electrically excitable cell. This means that it can respond to a stimulus and convert it into an action potential, which is the electrical impulse that the nervous system uses to communicate. A stimulus is any change in the environment that is strong enough to initiate an action potential. So an action potential, which we'll speak about in more detail in the next module, is an electrical signal that propagates or travels along the surface of the membrane of a neuron. It begins and travels due to the movement of ions, such as sodium and potassium, between the interstitial fluid and the inside of a neuron through specific ion channels in its plasma membrane. Some neurons are tiny and propagate an action potential over short distances, like less than 1 millimeter. Other neurons are some of the longest cells in the body. For example, the neurons that allow you to move your toes extend from the lumbar regions in your spinal cord, so just above your waist, all the way down to the muscles in your feet. So looking at the parts that make up a neuron, and most neurons have three parts: a cell body, dendrites, and an axon. So the cell body, or soma, is this part here, and it contains a nucleus surrounded by cytoplasm, which includes all of the typical organelles such as lysosomes, mitochondria, and a Golgi complex. Neuronal cell bodies also contain free ribosomes and prominent clusters of rough endoplasmic reticulum, which we call Nissl bodies. Proteins produced by the Nissl bodies are used to replace the cellular components of a neuron as material for the growth of a neuron, as well as to regenerate damaged axons in the peripheral nervous system. Dendrites are the receiving or the input portion of a neuron. They're all of these little extensions here. The plasma membrane of dendrites contain numerous receptor sites for binding chemical messengers from other cells. And the dendrites are usually quite short, they're tapered, and they're highly branched. The single axon of a neuron propagates the action potential or the nerve impulse towards another neuron, a muscle, or a gland. An axon is this thin, long, cylindrical projection here. The axon ends by dividing into many fine processes called axon terminals. At the tip of an axon terminal, they swell into these bulb-shaped structures called synaptic end bulbs. Others will exhibit a string of swollen bumps called varicosities. Both synaptic end bulbs and varicosities will contain tiny membrane-enclosed sacs called synaptic vesicles that store a chemical called a neurotransmitter. A neurotransmitter is a chemical that is released from a synaptic vesicle that either excites or inhibits another neuron, a muscle fibre, or a gland. Many neurons contain 2 or even 3 types of neurotransmitters, with each different neurotransmitter having a different effect on that postsynaptic cell or the cell that it connects with. The site of communication between two neurons or between a neuron and an effector cell, whether that be a muscle or a gland, is called a synapse. So a synapse would be like this part here before it connects with the next cell, the next muscle, or the next gland. So that is the basic structure of a neuron. However, neurons display great diversity in both their shape and their size, as well as the pattern of branching of their dendrites. Both structural and functional features are used to classify a neuron. So structurally, neurons are classified according to the number of processes extending from the cell body. So if this is our cell body here, multipolar neurons have several dendrites and one axon. So multiple extensions coming off that cell body. Most neurons in the brain and the spinal cord are multipolar neurons, as are all of our motor neurons. Bipolar neurons have one dendrite and one axon emerging from that cell body. Bi means two, so one dendrite and one axon. They are found in the retina of the eye, the inner ear, and the olfactory or the smell area of the brain. Unipolar neurons have dendrites and one axon that are fused together to form one continuous process that emerges from the cell body. So our cell body here, and only one extension out of that cell body. Uni means one. The dendrites of most of our unipolar neurons function as sensory receptors that detect a sensory stimulus such as touch, pressure, pain, or thermal stimuli.